Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Really excited. So, we never really planned on becoming Airbnb hosts. It wasn't part of some grand vision. We just took an early trip back in 2011 and got bit by that bug. And we were thinking, like, what if we bought a place like this? And it was great because we traveled to North Carolina and we were super excited to be on vacation. And again, it was not even in the cards to be an Airbnb owner, but we had an idea. And I had been in real estate at this point for close to 6 years and have our own investments, helped a lot of investors, worked with a lot of investors, so I have a good base knowledge of investing in general. But Airbnb was new and it was different and it was something that like we just weren't considering at all. It was not part of the equation. And in addition to it just being an investment, it was also a place to bring our family to. So we ended up buying our property in 2021, September 2021, got it listed in October 2021 on Airbnb. And that was it. We started our short term rental journey. And we didn't know if it would work, but it worked. And we were getting bookings very quickly. At that time, the Airbnb market had started to explode. It wasn't full blown, everyone was doing it, but it was getting very, very, very competitive. So we caught it. I wish we would have bought in 2020, right? I wish I had that foresight to buy in 2020. Um, but we didn't. We got in 2021, but the bookings were solid. The cash flow was really well. And then we learned a lot about the hospitality industry. So the big number one major issue that I believe people have getting into that business is it's a hospitality business. Short-term rental business is a hospitality business. It's not necessarily real estate investing. It is not. So you need to really understand that getting into it, it's not real estate investing, it's hospitality. You're essentially running a mini hotel. But I learned a lot about the systems and the marketing, guest satisfaction, and making sure like everything is correct and the house is cleaned. And you learn a lot, especially when you get those messages at 10 p.m. at night and the Wi-Fi isn't working, and it could just be a lot. Okay, but it turned into an actual business, which was great, and one that we were proud of. We were proud of owning it. We were proud of being able to have this in our house and our family for our kids too. And we made a lot of great memories, celebrate birthdays, holidays, major milestones. So it was more than just a rental. And I know that's why a lot of people get into it. But something happened along the way. My goals changed, our goals changed, and a shift happened. And now we're in this different season where the short term rental market has evolved substantially from the point that we got into it in 2021. You have more regulations, way more competition, way more headaches. Guests are expecting so much more for you, so much more from you than the majority of people are offering. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, it just is what it is. It has evolved so much, right? And it felt like the right step for us to sell. And that's why this is going to be my last video that I've done that I'm going to be doing in the actual Poconos, probably. Maybe not, but more so in this house. It's definitely going to be the last one because we are selling in a few weeks. This is going to be a send off, but I'm also going to share with you in this live stream, like really pulling the curtain back to understand what's actually happening in the Airbnb market right now because there's so much question out there. There's so much, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what buyers are paying attention to and what they aren't, what they exactly like what they care about and what they don't care about. How we prepped this property to sell it to really get the biggest return, and how you can do the same, and also like the biggest mistakes that we made along the way. to help you try and avoid that same thing. Because if you are a current home or if you are a current Airbnb owner, you are more than likely feeling the pinch, right? There's there's a certain amount of people who are excelling in this. And it's a very small portion of Airbnb hosts. For the majority of Airbnb hosts, you're feeling that pinch and you're probably considering selling. And I'm going to tell you why it's a good idea and how to go about it, because there is not much information that I came across when it comes to selling an Airbnb property. It is different than selling a normal property. It is, because you are essentially you're selling a business, right? And not a lot of people understand how to sell a business. Yes, the house itself is the business, but you really have to understand that when you're marketing and listing an Airbnb, there's so many things that are going into it that not a lot of people are thinking about. Again, because you might have this mindset around like, okay, well, if I were to sell my house, I'm not talking about your vacation, I'm not talking about your Airbnb. If you were to sell the current home that you live in and you're in an area where it's easier to sell, right? So I'm in the Pocono Mountains, right? It's a destination location, which means that people come here to vacation. The majority of Airbnb properties are in locations where people go to vacation. But there's also a lot of Airbnbs that are in big cities, right? Philly, Dallas, Austin, Chicago, right? New York. There's a lot of different Airbnbs in these big cities as well, where it might be easier to sell those properties if you have to. But at the same time, you really, really, really need to understand how to market and sell your Airbnb as a business. And that is the big gap that I've seen throughout all of this. That's the big gap, because there's not much information out there. And it's because this sell off that we're going to be seeing, that we are seeing, is newer. And it's not that vacation properties are new, right? The vacation properties here in the Poconos have been around for decades, decades and decades and decades. But the marketing and selling of this business, when you have this house and you are ready to exit and get out of it, that's very new, because things, again, have changed significantly from where they were 4 years ago, right? Not to say, and think about the people who have owned in these areas for decades, right? Like, it's changed dramatically. It has changed so much, but you really need to understand how you are going to position your property to get the most out of it. And a lot of that has to do with the current trends in the short-term rental market. So when you look at occupancy rates, right? And when you look at where people are moving to, or excuse me, where people are vacationing to, that is very important. And I have this article that I want to share with you. It's the destinations Airbnb is betting on for 2025 and why. Because this is going to give you a good insight into where people are going when they vacation. So it could help you understand, okay, like if I'm in around these areas, I might be good and I won't have to sell and get out of it. But if I'm not, right, and I'm feeling that pinch now and I'm feeling that pressure now, it might be a good idea to take a step back, analyze if it makes sense to continue owning this property as a short-term rental. And then if it doesn't, then you're going to be wanting to sell. So here's the article. Destinations Airbnb is betting on for 2025 and why. So where will travelers go next and what will drive them there? Airbnb's recently unveiled a list of 25 places to visit in 2025 offers more than a glimpse into the future of travel. It's a roadmap for uncovering trends, understanding guest motivations, and identifying business opportunities. So, you know, this my channel is not really about buying real estate. It's more geared towards sellers. But, I'm going to touch on a little bit of everything because this live stream will encompass a lot. And this is a good idea, or this is a good roadmap for potential business opportunities. So if you are in that stage of your investing career, of your life, where you are looking to expand and maybe get into it for the first time or expand your portfolio, then this would be a good idea to pay attention to this, because you want to go where the business opportunities are. You don't necessarily want to go where it's already very competitive. And look, for the most part, in most areas that are very desirable, Airbnb properties, short-term rentals are already there. And I can pretty much almost guarantee that the competition is very high. It's very high. So you have to keep that in consideration. Using internal data and strategic insights, Airbnb has spotlighted destinations that align with emerging traveler preferences. This list isn't just a reflection of where people want to go, it's a signal of where Airbnb, this is important, where Airbnb wants travelers to go, driven by supply availability and the platform's priorities. Here's what the list tells us about actionable trends for property managers 2025. But this is good to really good to understand, especially for owners who are considering selling. How Airbnb chooses its trending destinations, trending searches, wish list cities, and Gen Z preferences. This is, when I was reading this, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, who are the majority of people that are vacationing? Right. And you might think to yourself, well, like everyone, Sean, everyone vacations. Right. But like, what demographic, what generation is going to be traveling a lot? And look, Gen Z is going to be traveling a lot. They are this generation where they don't necessarily want to be tied down by owning homes or even renting. So I could see this generation a lot as, the years go on, where they want to be able to travel and stay in certain locations for a month, a few months at a time, you know? And if you are located in some of these locations where they want to travel to, then you could do well, you know? And if you are not located in some of these areas, and you, again, you are feeling that pinch, you're feeling your bookings dropping off like I have, you're feeling the revenue dropping like I have, you're feeling the fact that you have to cut prices to get people in, which I have been doing. It's very challenging, and I just so happen to be in one of those very competitive markets where you really have to do something to stand out, but if you're looking towards Gen Z preferences, um, this is a very good model to follow. And then third-party insights, so market analysis, skips in the report. Airbnb's methodology also highlights the company's strategic intent. So this is saying what Airbnb wants to do, which is important. It's important to understand this. Beyond reflecting traveler interests, these destinations align with where Airbnb has a strong supply base or is working to develop one. And that really leans into the business opportunity if you are looking, right? For short-term rental managers, the connection between supply and demand is crucial. It's where opportunities to meet market needs emerge. Okay, so we unpack the trends. Number one, targeting high growth international markets. So this is very interesting. Airbnb's expansion strategy includes significant investments in Brazil and Japan, South Korea, Germany, and reflect their efforts to diversify and reduce reliance on its core markets, which is US, Canada, UK, France, and Australia. So they are extending, they're really building this out and trying to find places like Brazil, destinations like Florianopolis, never heard of it, are highlighted for solo travelers, and Carnival spillover demand. Japan, with domestic travel comprising a substantial portion of market, Airbnb is focused on localizing efforts to capture both international and domestic travelers. And then South Korea. What does this mean for you? If you operate in these regions, consider aligning offerings with Airbnb's marketing, right? So this is going back to that business opportunity. And I'm not saying that if you don't own a property in these areas, because again, this is what Airbnb is trying to do, but it's just giving you an insight of what they are looking to push. This is what they're looking to push. They're not necessarily looking to push the Poconos anymore, or the Smoky Mountains, or Kissimmee, Florida. People traveling, they're not really looking to promote that anymore because those areas are already locked down, right? The big travel destinations, they're already locked down. There's already a ton of competition there. And that's already going to be forcing so many people to sell. So you can see the direction that Airbnb is going, pushing these international locations. They're not really focused on the people who have been there the most, right? They're trying to expand. And when any business tries to expand, especially that much, right? Like you're talking international in all these different areas. I don't care how big the business is, how big the company is, you're always going to have some kind of negative effect on the core people who have been with you for a long time. It's just how business works. When you try to expand, especially as large as what they're trying to do, all the core people who have been Airbnb hosts for 5, 10 years, 15 years, you're going to see some kind of negative effect on that. Okay. And this is what's drawing a lot of people to consider and want to sell their property too, because they can see this. They see the effect that it's having. Shifting focus to less crowded alternatives. Okay, so it talks here about these detour locations, off beaten path locations that still offer experiences. Brasilia, Brazil, La Serena, Chile, Cardiff, Wales, historic city, right? So if you're in these areas, right, or if you're located or thinking about buying, this is a good opportunity for you. It's a very good opportunity for you. But if you're not looking to purchase, then you're going to be, if you're not looking to purchase and you already are established, then this doesn't really help, right? This next part, though, this is important to know if you are already established and you don't do this already. This is something that I didn't do that well. I kind of wish I did. There's not many big events that happen at the Poconos, right? You have the Jim Thorpe Film Festival, which is a pretty big event. I never marketed around that though, but generally always booked around there anyway. The other big event is NASCAR. Comes usually in July, and we generally book the summers, weeks at a time. But if you ride the wave of event-driven travel, like that's really important. That's something, again, I wish that I did, but in 2024, you had Taylor Swift concerts and the Olympics, right? So people that were in Paris that own short-term rentals, you probably crushed it, right? Wherever Taylor Swift was performing, if you marketed around that, you probably crushed it as well. And things to consider. This is the NFL draft is coming up very soon. So if you're in the Green Bay area, market that. Opening ceremony of a global adaptive sporting event in Vancouver, British Columbia. I have no idea what that means. Mumbai, India, Coldplay concert, right? So there's so many different things, so many different ways you can market around what you currently have that you might not be thinking about. And again, this really leads into what I was talking about in the beginning, some of the mistakes that I made. And the majority of the mistakes that I made centered around not marketing well enough this property to not marketing around these events and just not marketing as much in general, right? Because I say this, I firmly believe this, that it's 50-50 or 60-40, but you have the property and you can only do so much to the property, right? Like you can only update it to a certain level. You can only have so many amenities. And then at some point you get capped. At some point you're just like, okay, I can't really do much more to the property. So that's like 50%, maybe 60%. And then the other 40 or 50% is you as the owner. And it centers a lot around your marketing abilities, your marketing capacity, and how you can get your property in front of the right guests and through whatever platform. The biggest mistakes as a short-term rental owner came from not marketing enough. That's really any business. That is any business on earth. a lot of issues stem from not marketing enough, not knowing where to market, not knowing how to market, right? And I'm a marketing guy. This it's what I love about the fact that I got into real estate, almost 9 years ago now. The whole marketing aspect of it and the social media and creating videos and creating ad copy and getting my message out there, right? I love that. I love that. I love that. And I just didn't do it enough here, you know. And I think I truly believe, actually, I shouldn't say I think, but I truly believe that people get into this with this mindset that, okay, if I get my property on Airbnb and Verbo, they are going to do the heavy lifting, which there is truth around that. They are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, you know, but there is so much more that you can do as a host to market your property properly. And again, that's like the number one mistake that we made is not marketing it enough. And that's that's leading us to the point where we are now and having to sell it. So if you're in the position where you're like, oh man, I don't want to get rid of it, like I really don't. So you have to understand where the issue is. It's either the house and what it offers, or you as a host and what you're doing from the marketing standpoint. They're the two most important things. So going back to this article number 4, from activities to adventures, the demand for immersive travel. This was very interesting. So travelers in 2025 are increasingly seeking destinations that offer immersive experiences and adventurous activities. This is really cool. This trend spans family groups, couples, and also solo travelers alike, with Airbnb revisiting its experience offerings to meet this demand. So places like Whit Sundays Queensland, that's a really cool name. Scuba diving, snorkeling, wildlife safaris, Mar de Plata, Argentina, surfing, paragliding, and museums. Manly, I don't know, what is NSW? Why don't I know that? That's weird. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Surfing focused getaways for all skill levels, right? So partnering up with local businesses and offering unique experiences. And honestly, wherever you are, you could probably do this. Like there's a lot of different local um companies around here that, like, I had all of these things in my head. I'm like, okay, we can reach out to local companies. And the issue is the issue is never the ideas for me personally. I know people do struggle with the ideas, I mean, right? But since I have that marketing brain, I don't struggle with the ideas. It was the execution of it, and the amount of time and effort that it actually takes to put into it. But it's like anything. If you can build a solid system around it, then you can make it so that it's not so challenging, right? And a lot of the work is done up front. So it's a heavy lift up front. But once you get it set up and running, you don't really have to do much else. And I mean that from like a standpoint of, I have skirmish paintballing right down the road, 10 minutes. I could have went to that company, went to the owner and said, hey, I own an Airbnb rental. I want to market your business within my Airbnb. You can leave a pamphlet. You can be a marketing partner on our website. We'll do everything for free. We'll handle everything. But if my guests come and they stay here, we want you to offer them a 10% discount, or fine, I don't know, whatever, right? And I'll market you. I'll get you more business, because that's the standpoint that you have to come from as a host. I will market your business. It will benefit you and it'll benefit me as well. And in return, more marketing, more exposure. If you're doing some kind of promotion for your business and you say, hey, if you're looking for somewhere to stay, you can stay at the Keats Retreat, right? Cross promoting with local businesses. I mean, there's so many avenues that you can take as a host to do that. There's so many I could have done, but I didn't do that. Again, another big mistake. And then redefining wellness travel. Yeah, so this is just talking more about where the This is talking more about where Airbnb is pushing their business and what they are trying to focus on. The opportunities for 2025 and beyond. Airbnb destinations list is more than just a collection of trending locations. It's a reflection of evolving desires. That's really important. So for, again, this article was geared towards managers, but it's very, very important information for both sellers and then potential or current host and potential host. Okay. So I want to start to shift focus more into the selling aspect of it. Because again, like I mentioned, I couldn't find any really good information around it. And what I've noticed from selling properties here in the Poconos, selling my property, there is this trend, right? And I got this message today, so I can literally read you this message. When you are selling your short-term rental, you need to understand that you are selling it as a business. Yes, you are selling the house. Yeah, you're selling the house. But you also have to understand that the business aspect of it is very important because of this. And I will tell you this. It's really annoying. It's really frustrating because everyone says the same thing. This is the message that I get from agents. And this is the message I get from buyers that are looking to buy. Good morning, Sean. You have your listing, Keats Lane, and blah, blah, blah. Does it come fully furnished, right? So that is a question that I get all of the time. I get that question regularly. It is, does it come fully furnished? What's frustrating is the listing says it comes fully furnished. There's this term that I don't know who coined it, but it's RDR. Okay, it's an acronym. Realtors don't read. They don't. They never read. They only want to ask questions. But it's important, right? This all comes back to how you market your property when you're selling it. Okay. Does it come fully furnished? You would know that if you read the listing. Can you send me the STR financials? That is the key. That is very, very important. Can you send me the financials? So here's why I say you're selling the business, because yes, you're going to be selling the house. And when you list and you sell a house, the value is really based on what the buyer is willing to pay and what the seller is willing to sell for. At the end of the day, that's the simplest way to break it down. It's where what the buyer offers and what the seller is willing to accept. The way that value is determined just on a property when you're selling it is based on comparable sales. Comparable sales. So in this neighborhood, you look at the property that I'm in, and you take all the specs of it, 4-bed, 2-bath, about 1,800 square feet, 3 floors, acre of land, right? And then you compare that to other similar properties like that. And the value, I guess you can say the appraised value, what an appraiser would do, because a lot of people buy and have to have an appraisal done, unless you're buying for cash and you're not worried about that. But for the most part, people are financing it and they get an appraisal done. So the appraiser is going to say, okay, I'm going to look at all the other 4-bed, 2-bath, 3-floor homes, 1,800 square feet, based on the amount of land they have, the finishes they have. You're going to get 4, 5, 6, 10 comps or whatever it is, and then you're going to get the average, right? And then you take the average and then you look at what these properties have and what yours doesn't, and then the appraised value comes in at whatever value that is. That's how value is determined for a property when you're selling it. And then again, it comes to what the buyer is willing to pay and what the seller is willing to accept. Okay. It's a little bit different when it comes to Airbnb, because yes, you're selling the house, but you're also selling the business too. Right. And every single agent who knows what they're doing and every single buyer who knows what they're doing, they're going to ask you about the financials. They always are going to ask you about the financials. She asked me about permits as well, because that's another big one. We have septic, so you really have to understand, like, if you have a septic system, um, your system is either for 3 beds or for 4 beds or for 5 beds or 6 beds, whatever it is. So that's besides the point. But everyone's going to ask you about the business. Everyone is going to ask you about the numbers. What was your profit? What was your loss? What are your expenses? What is your occupancy rate? What is your average daily rate, right? These are the questions that potential buyers want to know, okay? These are the questions. This is what's very important to them. So it's not necessarily about just the house. Yes, you have to have a nice house, right? Unless you're selling it as a fixer-upper. But you also have to really understand that keeping track of your income, keeping track of your expenses is very important, because at some point, well, first off, you need it for your your taxes every year. So that's right. You should be doing it anyway, right? If you're operating a business, you should always be tracking your income and expenses. I use my gosh, why can't I? QuickBooks. I've always used QuickBooks for years. It's super easy, super easy. So when it comes to tracking your expenses, it's important for taxes. It's also important to understand where your business stands. And then it's very, very important to understand why you need to show that to potential buyers, because they are interested in what they can make from owning this property. They want to know, okay, how much money can I potentially make? Now, I'm going to get into something really important, but I have one article. I'm going to come back to one of the most important things after I share this article, but I did find something about selling your short-term rental. I was really excited, right? And I was like, okay, is this even going to be is this going to be good? I was a little hesitant, but I did find something, because again, I couldn't find any good information about actually selling your Airbnb. So, tips for selling your Airbnb property for top dollar. So this is from homelight.com. Take it for what it is. They're an okay company. Selling your Airbnb offers financial rewards and opportunities to move on to new ventures, which is what we're doing. Whether you're ready to cash out after years of successful hosting or simply looking for a fresh start, you're looking at several perks when you make this move. All right, this is all just like fluff. Now we're getting into the good stuff. So, no Airbnb and Verbo terms and conditions. This is like, again, this is the gap. This is the huge gap there is in the market when it comes to selling your Airbnb, because there's not that much information out there. Fortunately for me, I've sold Airbnbs as active Airbnbs. I'm selling mine as an active Airbnb as well. So I have experience now, right? And I can share that experience with other people who are looking to sell, which leads into, if you do have an Airbnb property you are looking to sell, you don't have to be in the Poconos for me to help you. So I have a network of over 26,000 agents now, all over the US and in Canada. All over the US and in Canada. My brokerage is 26,000 agents strong now, a little bit more. So if you want an agent who can help you sell your Airbnb and has knowledge of doing that, all you got to do is click that link in the description and schedule an appointment with me, and I can get you connected with someone. Anyway, know the Airbnb and Verbo terms and conditions. It's important to understand the T&C. Otherwise, your membership could be revoked. You don't want your membership revoked. You're selling the property. You're delisting the property, right? You're getting rid of your listing. You don't want to be off the platform, right? Because you might use Airbnb and Verbo. With Airbnb, accounts are assigned to host rather than properties. My account is me, right? It has nothing to do with my property once it's sold and I get rid of it. So this means that the content, the photos, the listings, and the reviews all belong to you. They stay with you. They stick with you, not your property. They stay with you as the host, not with the property. Owners cannot transfer ownership of listings to the new owner when they sell a property. You cannot transfer your Airbnb listing when you sell the property. You cannot transfer your Verbo listing when you sell your property. In my experience, I have found no workarounds except for, and I think this is the case, right? But I don't know how it's done. If you own Bear Creek Lodge, and Bear Creek Lodge is the property, you own it as a property, but you have it managed by a management company. So generally, management companies will be on Airbnb, it's perfect management company, and they have 50 listings. And your property, Bear Creek Lodge, is one of them. Essentially, you could sell that property, and the person buying it, if the new buyer purchases it and keeps it with perfect management company, then that listing, it stays with the management company, right? It stays with them. And the person buying it can essentially just take over ownership of the property, have it managed, and that listing will just stay as it is, right? So if that listing had 150, five-star reviews and it was fantastic and everyone loved it, and the new buyer was like, I really want this listing, and thankfully if it's with a management company, it stays with the management company, but the ownership can change. But me selling my property, the Keats Retreat, I cannot transfer that listing to the new buyer, the future owner. But I own the content, I own the photos, I own the listing. And for me, since I have that marketing mindset and I worked very hard on the listing in Airbnb and my personal booking site, like I worked really hard on that. I, as part of like this package for me selling the business, I said to the new owner, you can absolutely have my listings. I'll give you my listings. I'll copy and paste, all of our about me or about the property, all that stuff in Airbnb. You can have it all, right? Because I'm packaging this house as the business and saying, hey, this is an asset. This is absolutely part of this business and I'm passing off to you, right? So it makes it a little bit more valuable, right? And it makes that transition a little bit more easy because again, you can't transfer that listing over, which is really frustrating. So when an owner sells a property, the listing is closed and the new owner will need to recreate a listing. Smith says you could keep the same listing, but would need to work with Airbnb to make that happen. I've never seen that able to happen unless, again, it's managed by a different company. Before selling your Airbnb, you'll need to complete all bookings and make sure the property is clean and ready for the buyer to use. Yeah, we know that. Verbo terms and conditions are fairly similar to Airbnb's. Listings cannot be transferred to the new owner. New owners must create a new account and listing after their purchase, and former owners must deactivate their listing. In the event you sell a property, your property description and photos cannot be transferred to the new owner. However, your buyer may request to transfer the listing reviews to the new listing. That's good. That's good for Verbo, that you could potentially transfer over the reviews. And again, I haven't seen anything that said that I can't give my digital assets of the listing photos and all the copy to the new owner, right? They just say you can't take that actual listing because each listings have their own listing numbers, right? So once my listing gets canceled, that number goes away. The new owner, she takes it over, uploads the listing, and it's almost like it could be the same property, right? It is going to be the same property with the exception of some things, because we're going to take some of the artwork. So eventually she'll have to get new photos, but just to get up and running before that happens, that would be. So moving on, market your Airbnb's home value and income history to investors. Really important for the whole selling process. So different than selling just a normal house. With a short-term vacation rental, proof of your rental income demonstrates the value of the property. Excuse me. But when selling a property as a rental, the investor will purchase the property at a premium because they're paying for the actual property along with the future income that it should continue to produce. That's that important piece that I wanted to get to. And I wanted to wait until we got to this article to share that. When you are selling your short-term rental as a business, if the business is profitable, you can sell the house for more money. Now, the issue that comes with that is the appraisal. So, take for instance a hypothetical property that all the comps say, based on the condition, based on the location, based on all the amenities that it has, let's just say it says 500,000. We take that property, and that property is making 30 grand net profit a year, which is pretty substantial for an Airbnb listing, especially at that price point. I mean, that's like a unicorn. Net profit. I'm talking net. So the seller of that says, I know that everything is saying that I should get 500, and I know I can get 500, but it's a profitable business. I'm going to push it out at 550,000 because I want 550 grand, because I know that even though these other properties sold for 500, mine's a business and you are buying my house as a business, so I'm going to be charging more. And buyer agrees, like, hey, it's making 30 grand profit. I'm very okay paying an extra 50 grand or 75 or 100. It could be a bidding war at that price. So the issue then lies in the appraisal, right? Because an appraiser is not going to take into, to my knowledge, not yet. I feel like I've heard before that they were considering this, but to my knowledge, as of right now, April 16, 2025, I don't believe appraisers are taking into account the business aspect of the home, of that property, right? They're only looking at how they always appraise properties: condition, location, amenities. So the appraisal the purchaser could say, I'm buying it for 550, whatever my down payment is. And then they're going to have to specify, like, if there is a appraisal shortfall, right? So the appraiser is saying 500, but it's 550. I'm going to come to the table with that difference. Okay. That's the big issue that I've seen and I see with the selling of the business, especially if the house is very profitable and they're selling it for more than the neighborhood comps, right? But as long as the buyer is willing to cover the difference, then there's no issue. Now, if the buyer's not willing to cover the difference and the seller's not willing to budge, then they're just going to move on from that buyer and try and find somebody else. And if you're paying cash, right, then there's no issue at all. So it's important to understand that the numbers are important, because when you go to sell it, besides just for taxes, but when you go to sell it, every single person that's looking to buy it as an investment will ask about that. When you can provide documentation about a property's revenue, occupancy rates, and pricing, it allows investors to see the property's income potential value and makes your listing appeal to buyers seeking a sound investment. Of course, when lenders evaluate income properties, again, this happens for investment properties, but I haven't seen this for short-term rentals. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that appraisers and lenders take this into account now. They calculate the median income brought in over the last quarter. In the same way, knowing that rental income potential of a property allows investors to interpret their return on investment. So the higher the income potential, the higher the sales price. That is very true for normal rental properties, right? Single family, multifamily rental properties. I have not seen that for Airbnb. Check with your lender, right? If you're listening to me and you're like, oh, yeah, that's not true, you're an idiot. Oh, that's fine. I mean, if your lender says otherwise, then that's great. But that's hard information to come by, right? So let's just take that scenario. Let's say that the $500,000 house that's selling for 550, and they're comparing it to 5 other short-term rental investments. That means that the appraiser has to get the numbers from 5 other investors, right? And that is challenging, right? I've had appraisers call me about properties that I sold because they're like, hey, I have a client who's buying this property. Can you tell me? Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm willing to share information about that. But that's me, right? If an appraiser is calling all these other properties around saying, "Hey, give me the numbers for your because I'm doing an appraisal." What's the likelihood they're going to get that from an owner? It's not likely at all. It's not likely at all. I'm telling you, right? Because owners aren't putting that information out there as publicly, like you can potentially get it from just a normal investment, long-term investment. So there was one more thing I wanted to talk about with that, and I kind of lost my track because documenting properties revenue. Okay. So, oh yeah, okay. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. So you have, let's just say it's the 50-50. It's the house and the owner. You can be selling your property. And this is why it's important to track your numbers, and this is why it's important to market, and this is why it's important to be a really good host. Because and I've had multiple conversations with people who want to sell their home because their bookings are down, their revenue's down, their profits down. They're coming out of pocket every month now where they weren't before in the last 1, 2, 3 years, 4 years, but now they are because again, it's super competitive. And these people I'm talking to are in the Pocono Mountains. But this is happening all over, right? It's all over the country, absolutely, and probably all over the world where the bookings are down because there is more competition and there's not that many more guests that are looking to stay. So I had a conversation with this woman who lives in the neighborhood over from the Indian Mountain Lakes. And great house, right? Her house is awesome. She bought it at a more higher inflated price, right? Because it was the height of the market. She did really well. And again, the house was really great. It had like a separate garage that was converted for like a playroom area. It was awesome. But the issue is her numbers are down. And this was my issue too. We ended up getting a pretty good price, and I'm not can't share that now until it settles. But my numbers were down too from where they were. And her numbers were really down from where they were. So the price she wanted to get for it, if her numbers were up, she would have been able to get that, but her numbers were not. So it would be a stretch to get that price for it because people are buying businesses. The enormous issue with the investors buying businesses, and this varies whether it's a first-time short-term rental investor, a seasoned one. You could be a seasoned real estate investor who's never owned a short-term rental property. You don't really understand that it's not real estate investing. It's hospitality. It's owning a small hotel. The big issue, and this is what I told her, and this is what I told another person that wanted to sell his house in my neighborhood. I had multiple conversations recently, and his numbers are down too. The big issue is the person buying it can influence the numbers dramatically if they know what they're doing. But they don't understand that. The majority of people who own or want to buy short-term rentals are first-time short-term rental owners, and they don't truly understand that you can influence it by making upgrades and marketing the house properly. So you're going to run into that issue when you're selling your property as a short-term rental investor, especially if your numbers aren't what they were the previous year or the years before. And I tell people, if you're looking to buy a short-term rental investment right now, don't even look at the numbers from 2022 or 2023. Who cares? What matters is right now, 2024, and what your future bookings look like. That's the big issue. Is so many people don't understand that the owner has so much sway, so much power to drive business to these properties that they're own, but they don't see it like that. They only are basing their purchase price and their offer on what the property generated in the past 12 months and future bookings. So you're not gonna, when you're selling it, you're not gonna be able to get that price you want if your numbers are down, right? You see that disconnect? You're not gonna be able to get the price you want if your numbers are down. And that's the frustrating thing about it. Just moving on from there, right? Marketing other value add-ons on your property. So this is very important. Market the prime location. You can sell a property at a premium price when it's in a really good location, especially if the home is well maintained. Uh, in the Poconos, right? And just like it says here in coast communities, mountains, cabin ski resorts, lakefront will get you wild. Dude, I see homes listed in this neighborhood, lakefront, for 1.2, 1.3 million. The Poconos, pre-pandemic, you could get a lakefront home for like 300 or 400 grand. This house that I own, that I bought for 350,000, the owner previous to me, I believe he bought it for like, I think it was like 80,000, right? And he didn't own it for like, it was sometime in the 2000s. The market exploded here, just like everywhere else, right? But like if you have that prime location, if you're close to ski lifts, if you're close to the beaches, if you're close to lakes in the mountains, if you're in the suburbs of cities, right, where people travel to a lot, or there's so many different prime locations that you can market that's going to increase the value. Access to professional contacts. So another valuable add-on to investors is providing access to a network of professionals, include property managers, cleaners, and repair and service pros. Sellers often share professional service and maintenance contracts or contacts and contracts with new owners. That's something that I'm doing. Not like it's like coveted information for me, because like I just found good tradespeople, good contractors through the Facebook group in my area. But here's one thing. It's a killer if you have it. It's a really great marketing value add, like an add-on. I have a list of email addresses of all the people that stayed in my property over the past 4 years. I think we're over 300 people now. So I was like, hey, part of this, I can give you access. I can give you these emails because I don't need them. I collected them. You can market to them this property, right? Like you can right off the bat, you can say, hey, I know you stayed at the Keats Retreat before. I'm blah blah. I'm the new owner. Want to keep you in the know that this property is still available if you're looking to travel to Poconos, right? So if you have a list, and this all comes back to operating and running a good business, if you have this list of contacts, of email addresses, of people that you've worked with, and you can package that together as an add-on to your listing, it just makes it that much more valuable or easier to sell compared to the other people. This is really important too. So know the ideal Airbnb buyer. When pricing your Airbnb, know who your ideal buyer is. This is really important. You typically find two types of investors. You have entrepreneurs and large investment companies. So in the Poconos, there's not many like really big investment companies that I've ever come across. It's more entrepreneurs, right? Generally, the person who buys this is the people that have come through, the people that showed interest were later in life entrepreneurs, I would say 40 and above. Married folks, people who have younger to middle-aged kids, right? Like you can really nail it down. You can use AI to help you nail it down and other sources, but know your ideal buyer and how to market to them. And it's the same thing with marketing your Airbnb. Like know who your ideal guest is. It's another big mistake that I made along the way. I knew who my ideal guest was, right? Because the ideal person that stays in this house is a family. We don't get single people that want to rent a 4-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot home. It's generally families, and it's generally multi-generational, right? So it could be the person who books and the grandparents and the cousins and right and people that book together. I would say our average guest count was probably 8 over the past 4 years, at least 8. Most of the times it felt like a little bit more, but I would say it would average 8. So entrepreneurs are investors with small real estate portfolios that act as owner operators. Huge, right? The person who's going to be buying it will be an owner operator. They want to enjoy it like we did with their family. A lot of people want to buy in this area specifically, and I'm sure a lot of other places as well, Jersey Shore, Florida, as owner operators. I want to enjoy it with my family when it's not being rented. I rent it out in order to cover costs. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Um, but that kind of leads into a lot of the issues that have come from Airbnb and this mindset, right? This entrepreneur mindset over these past 5 years. Whenever I post on my TikToks primarily about the Airbnb market, a flood of comments talk about how the Airbnb market ruined areas for first time home buyers specifically. I've had many conversations with people that said Airbnb took over this part of Scottsdale, Arizona, and now nobody can afford it, and they jacked the prices all up. That happened in the Poconos. That absolutely happened here. Not that it was a huge area for people to buy in as first time home buyers, not even close, but there are people that live here full time. There's a lot of people. Compared to the amount of people who own here part time, I mean, the part timers are significantly more, but there's still a good chunk of people who buy here and live here year round, have their kids in the school districts, right? Work here, everything. So that made it very difficult for first time home buyers, like people that are staying in this area, that grew up in this area and ended up staying in this area to buy. Because again, they could buy a house in even in just 2020 for 160 grand, and then a year later that house was selling for 300. Substantial growth, and it made it very, very difficult, and that is the big downside in my opinion about Airbnb in general. It hurt a lot of markets for first time home buyers. It did. A very unfortunate. It's not like I could have stopped it. It's not like anyone could have stopped it. It's just what happened, right? The short-term rental market exploded. And then a lot of people that bought in 2023 and 2024 at higher prices, they're the ones now that are looking to sell, right? Because they got in when it was competitive, they paid a higher price. Things might have worked for a little bit, and then they realized like people kept buying, people, buying, supply and demand. The demand was sky high for so many areas, and the supply was just not there. So unfortunately, a lot of people who bought in that 2024 or 23, 24, even in 2022, and me, right, 2021, they're the ones that are going to be selling now. And now, if you're in these like areas like Florida, where Airbnb took over in some of these neighborhoods, now they're selling, but they're trying to sell at these really high prices, and it still prices so many first-time home buyers out. And it's the biggest, one of the biggest downsides of Airbnb and just the real estate market in general over the past 5 years is how unaffordable everything is, and how so many first-time home buyers just want to buy a freaking house and they can't because it's too damn expensive. Very frustrating. Yeah, so know your buyer, know your ideal buyer. Talked a little bit about cap rate. I mean, I've never had anyone ask me about cap rate. Bigger investors will always talk about cap rate, but for the most part, no one's really thinking about it. Okay, then to finish out, let's say your total rent 3,600, expenses are 12,000. That is not accurate at all. Property value is 400, cap rate 6%. Okay, yeah, again, look, not many people are asking about cap rate when they're buying an Airbnb. That's more like multi-units. Then I'm just going to breeze through this because this is all like basic stuff that I talk about all of the time when it comes to selling your home. High quality photos and video. I'm selling a property. I'm super excited. It's actually not an Airbnb currently. It's an octagon. Like I'm super excited. Yeah, it's an octagon shaped house. They don't make them like this anymore. Super cool on 5.5 acres. Unfortunately, this is another downside of Airbnb owning, and why a lot of people are getting out of it is because the regulations, right? So this area in East Stroudsburg in Pennsylvania and the Poconos, for forever you could have Airbnbs, but they regulated it, right? The township regulated it. It's not even in an HOA, which that's more desirable now than it ever was. When I bought, it was very desirable to be in an HOA, right? But when you're in an HOA, and a lot of the neighborhoods, a lot of the areas that Airbnbs do the well are in HOA communities, especially in the Poconos. But this area where the property is located that I'm listing is, they regulated it. And it's like this house would be a cash cow if you could rent it. It would literally be a cash cow. It could do, I would say, easily $175,000 a year, easily, maybe more, potentially more. So, but look, regulations have crushed profits. They crushed a lot of homeowners, unfortunately, and yeah, I mean that's just something you have to deal with. But tips for selling Airbnb. Okay, this is a little cool little list. Share your listing reviews of buyers. That just bolsters the appeal of your property. Is showing people like, hey, this property is really great. Look what all these people have said. It's not just me saying it. I have this list of now 75 people with 5-star review. So advertise your short-term rental license. Look, in a lot of areas, you can't transfer your short-term rental license. In my area, I can't. The owner has to get it themselves. So you might be able to, if you are located in an area where you can advertise it, absolutely do that, because that's another uh, big selling point. Consider selling your Airbnb turnkey and furnished. That's what I'm doing. We're gonna take some personal stuff here, some art, but for the most part, we're selling it for the furnished. That helps make it better. That helps make it more appealing when you sell it turnkey and when you sell it furnished as well. And then find an agent that specializes in it. Sell to an investor for a competitive cash offer, quick sale. Yeah. This is important. I mean, this is really important. I don't want to skip over this too much. Finding an agent who specializes in and knows Airbnb investments, right? So if you do see this and you are in the Poconos and you're thinking about selling, I can help you. I specialize in selling in the Poconos, especially Airbnbs, because I know that market. Um, but anywhere, like anywhere that you are thinking about selling, you should very much focus on finding someone who specializes in short-term rental investments, because that is going to help you. I have seen people who have no business, right? Agents, I'm sorry. I've seen agents who know nothing about investing sell investment properties. And one of the things that drives me up the wall is like when agents market themselves like, hey, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest, call me. Why would I invest? Why would I ask you to help me invest in a property if you have no investments yourself? Like, that's wild. That's wild. Find someone who knows that market that can help you. Find someone who knows that market, who understands short-term rentals, and that is going to be a huge benefit to you. So this was great. Again, signing off from the Keats Retreat for the last time. Looking forward to what's to come in the future. And if you are thinking about selling again anywhere in the US or Canada and you need an agent, just connect with me. All you gotta do is click that link in the description. Look forward to speaking with you guys soon, and have a great day.